Imagine leaning over the side of a boat, eyes straining into the dark water below. What if something looked back up at you? For centuries, humans have told tales of monsters in the deep. Serpents longer than ships, shadows that ripple beneath the waves, and eyes that glint just beneath the surface. Some stories go back to ancient civilizations. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote of colossal serpents in Egyptian waters. Sailors across history whispered of creatures that could capsize ships or lure them off course, sometimes with beauty, sometimes with terror. But why do these legends endure? Maybe it's because so much of our oceans and deep lakes remain unexplored. Maybe it's the primal fear of the unknown. Or maybe, just maybe, some of these creatures were real all along. In this episode, we'll set sail through the 5 most iconic monsters of lake and sea lore, from the icy waters of Scotland to the still depths of North America. We'll dive into the myths, the eyewitness accounts, and what science has to say. Some creatures might have roots in reality. Others, they may be folklore made flesh. But all of them remind us that something ancient and unknown may still dwell in the deep. Before submarines, before sonar, before satellites mapped every corner of our oceans, there were sailors, wooden ships, endless water, and fear. And in those days, the most feared creature of all was the Kraken. First whispered in Norse sagas and seafarer tales, the Kraken was no ordinary monster. They said it had tentacles thicker than tree trunks, that it could rise like an island from the sea, only to drag entire ships and their crews into a watery grave. In the 13th century Icelandic saga, Örvar Odr, sailors described a beast called the Hafgufa, so massive it was mistaken for land. Later, in 1752, the Bishop of Bergen, Erik Pontoppidan, described the Kraken in chilling detail. It was vast, it could suck ships down with whirlpools, and its appearance foretold disaster. But here's the twist. While most dismissed these tales as sailors' superstition, in the 1870s, something changed. A giant squid carcass, nearly 40 feet long, washed ashore. And suddenly, the Kraken didn't seem so imaginary. Today, we know of the Architeuthis, real, rare, and still barely understood. They live in the deep ocean, rarely seen alive, but their existence gave weight to centuries of fear. Even modern ships have occasionally caught glimpses, tentacles on submersibles, sucker marks on whales. And while no squid has ever attacked a ship, the raw size, the unknowable depths, and the ancient lore continue to blur the line between myth and monster. The Kraken may never have crushed a vessel, but the oceans still hold creatures vast enough to feed the legend. Welcome to Lake Champlain, a majestic stretch of fresh water bordering New York, Vermont, and parts of Quebec. But beneath this peaceful surface lies something far more mysterious. Locals call it Champ, the Loch Ness of North America. The legend stretches back centuries. Even the lake's namesake, Samuel de Champlain, wrote of seeing a serpent-like creature here in 1609. Though modern historians believe he may have been describing a garfish. But it wasn't until the 19th century that sightings began pouring in. Fishermen reported seeing a long-necked, humped beast gliding through the water. And then came the photo that lit the fire. 1977. A woman named Sandra Mancy snapped a picture while vacationing by the lake with her family. What she captured? A dark, sinuous shape rising from the water, something that looked eerily like a plesiosaur. To this day, the photo has never been conclusively debunked. Skeptics argue it was likely a floating log or a group of otters surfacing in a line. But believers, they see something more. Interestingly, Vermont and New York have both passed symbolic resolutions protecting Champ as a species, just in case. Champ has become more than a myth. He's a mascot, a source of local pride, even featured in minor league baseball team names and tourist brochures. But is there something real beneath the legend? Lake Champlain is home to massive sturgeons, prehistoric-looking fish that can grow over 7 feet long. Their ridged backs and unusual shapes might easily be mistaken for a monster in the right light or from the wrong angle. Yet, for many, Champ is more than biology. He's a reminder that mystery can live in plain sight, and that sometimes we protect our legends not because we believe them, but because we want to. Canada has its own legend of the deep, one far older than most realize. In Okanagan Lake, nestled in British Columbia, locals speak of a creature named Ogopogo. But before settlers gave it a catchy, almost cartoonish name, the native Silks, Okanagan, First Nations knew it as Naha-a-itk, a sacred and powerful water spirit. In traditional stories, Niha-a-itk wasn't just a monster, but a being tied to the lake's spiritual balance. Travelers were expected to offer tobacco or small animals before crossing the lake, a ritual of respect, not fear. Fast forward to the 20th century, and Ogopogo begins its transformation into a modern legend. 1914. A sighting by a local man near Kelowna described a long, serpent-like creature diving in and out of the water. Then came the 1968 home movie, grainy footage showing humps moving rhythmically across the lake. Though blurry, it's still cited as one of the best-known alleged recordings. More recently, in 2011, two tourists filmed what they claimed was a multi-humped creature gliding just below the surface. What could it be? Scientists often point to waves caused by boat wakes, floating logs, or optical illusions over the water. But some propose natural explanations like a giant sturgeon, or even a line of otters swimming nose to tail, creating the illusion of a single undulating beast. Still, none of these theories have stopped the fascination. Statues of Ogopogo decorate Kelowna's parks. Gift shops sell plushies. There are even search expeditions, some local, some international. Japanese TV crews once came to investigate, intrigued by the legend's endurance. And that's the thing. While Ogopogo has become a cultural mascot, many locals still whisper about odd wakes, unexplained ripples, and fleeting shadows seen from docks at dusk. Because whether myth or misunderstood wildlife, Ogopogo reminds us that sometimes the most enduring monsters are the ones we choose to keep alive. For centuries, sailors told stories of something vast and sinuous slipping through the waves, sea serpents seen across oceans and across time. These weren't just tavern tales. They were entered into logbooks, sketched by naval officers and feared as much as storms. Take the HMS Daedalus sighting of 1848, a British Royal Navy frigate sailing off the coast of West Africa, recorded seeing a 60-foot-long serpent-like creature with a mane along its back. Several officers witnessed it in broad daylight. Their testimony sparked a sensation. Other reports followed, from Norwegian whalers to American clippers, long necks, humps rising and falling, gliding beneath the waves, vanishing as mysteriously as they appeared. In the Pacific Northwest, the creature has a name, Cadborosaurus, or Caddy, after Cadboro Bay, British Columbia. Sightings date back to indigenous Haida and Tlingit lore, long before colonists arrived. Caddy is described as a multi-humped, horse-headed sea serpent that moves with surprising speed. In 1937, a decaying carcass was pulled from the stomach of a whale in Naden Harbor, believed at first to be Caddy itself. But zoologists later suggested it was a decomposed basking shark whose cartilage structure can warp into strange shapes after death. Science offers several explanations. Whales diving in a line, their backs creating an illusion of multiple humps. Giant oarfish, real creatures that can grow over 30 feet long and undulate in eerie vertical waves. And yes, giant squid, seen only in death until the 21st century, when deep-sea cameras finally captured one alive. But perhaps the most enduring feature of sea serpent lore is how universal it is. From the Makara of Hindu mythology to the Akorakamui of Japan, every coastline seems to have its own version, its own shadow in the water. Maybe that's because the ocean isn't just deep, it's unknowable. And for every mystery explained, there's always another just below the surface. Of all the world's water-dwelling legends, one name rises above them all. Whispered in Scotland, shouted by tourists, immortalized in headlines and hoaxes, Nessie. The Loch Ness monster first surged into modern consciousness in 1933 when a couple reported seeing a whale-like creature cross the road in front of their car and plunge into the loch. Soon after came the surgeon's photo, that iconic silhouette of a long neck above the water. Published in 1934, it became the definitive image of Nessie for decades, until 1994 when it was revealed as a clever hoax involving a toy submarine. But the damage, or the magic, was done. Searches exploded in the 1950s and 60s. Sonar surveys, underwater cameras, even submarines scoured the loch. One expedition in 1975 captured an image that some claim shows a flipper, though skeptics say it's just a murky blob in the silt. In 2003, the BBC conducted the most extensive sonar sweep to date, turning up nothing conclusive. Then came 2019, when scientists conducted a DNA survey of the loch. Their findings? No sign of prehistoric creatures, but lots of eel DNA. It lent credibility to the theory that sightings could stem from giant European eels, which can grow over 6 feet long and move in strange, undulating ways. Other theories abound. Floating logs, swimming deer, seismic gas bubbles, or simply the human mind's desire to believe. Yet none of this stopped the sightings. To this day, people report humps, wakes, and shadowy shapes. The legend persists, not despite the lack of proof, but because of it. Because Nessie isn't just a creature, she's a question mark, a cultural icon, a myth we've chosen to keep alive, on t-shirts, in news stories, in childhood imaginations. So perhaps the real power of the Loch Ness monster lies not in the water, but in how many of us still glance twice at a ripple and wonder, what if? We've always peered into the deep and asked, what's down there? From the icy reaches of Loch Ness to the sunlit swells of the Caribbean, our species has filled the unknown with creatures, sometimes terrifying, sometimes majestic. But maybe lake and sea monsters aren't just about what swims below. Maybe they're about us, our fears, our hopes, our need to explain the unexplainable, and our refusal to believe that we've already discovered everything worth knowing. After all, oceans cover over 70% of our planet, and we've mapped only a fraction of the floors beneath. How much of the abyss still keeps its secrets? Many of these legends likely began with sightings of real animals, giant squid, massive eels, or even misidentified logs. Others were born from loneliness at sea, imagination blurred by fog, or the age-old urge to tell a good story. Yet we return to them, We carve them into local culture. We name statues, launch expeditions, and teach our kids to watch the water's edge with curiosity. Because some part of us still wants to believe. So now it's your turn. Have you ever heard of a local legend, a monster in your lake or bay? Do you believe these creatures once lived, or still do? Leave a comment below. Let us know which story chilled you and which one you secretly hope is true. And remember, in the ocean's depths, truth and myth often swim side by side.